What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Stefan here from App Stuff, and this video is going to be all about how environment objects work in SwiftUI. So I'm going to give you guys a quick rundown of what we're going to be doing before we get started with the code. So I have the completed app example opened up here, and this is going to mimic like a settings or edit profile feature. So we can see some user information here, and we're going to go through this sort of edit profile flow. So you're going to have some options. You can either edit your email, or you can edit your address. So you guys will notice that right now the address is 123 Main Street. If I changed it to say maybe street like this, and let's say we can do like 456, and I hit done, you guys will notice it automatically updates on the previous screen and then also automatically updates on the original home screen. So we're going to be going over how we can use environment objects to make this as easy and as efficient as possible. So let's go ahead and get started with the code, guys. So with Xcode opened up with a new project, guys, I'm going to go ahead and just start copy and pasting the code that we need to create the UI so that we can get started with what environment objects are all about. So as I copy and paste, you guys can pause the video and type stuff out, or I will show you where to get access to the source code here in just a second. Let me just go ahead and copy and paste this guy in here. And this gives us this like user info view, and it's a navigation link that will take us over to this edit profile screen. So really quickly, I'll just break this down. It's pretty straightforward. We create a list, we create a navigation link. It goes to this edit profile view, which we'll go over in a second. And it's just this HStack with a bunch of user info that we see here. And guys, if we click on this, it goes to this edit profile view, which gives us these edit options that we see in the completed app. So we can then click on the email to edit the email or the address to edit the address. So let me just go ahead and go into the edit profile view to show you guys what that's all about. So this is the edit profile view. It's pretty simple. Once again, it's just a list. It has a section that says edit options, and then we're going to leave the full name to be non-editable. People don't typically change their names, but they do change their email and their address. So each one of these guys are navigation links that go to their relative views, edit email view and edit address view. And if we scroll down to our edit email view, this is what that looks like. And in the completed app, it's pretty straightforward as well. We just have a text field. It's in a VStack. It's got a divider at the bottom, a spacer to move everything up to the top. This toolbar here, and right now when we click that, it's just going to dismiss that screen. We'll go over the actual functionality for that button later on, but it's pretty straightforward, guys. And the edit address view is the exact same thing. It just is for the address instead of the email. So actually, let me change this to edit your address, and the navigation title is edit your address, blah, blah, blah. Pretty straightforward. So you guys can pause the video and type this stuff out, or if you want access to the source code, you guys can head over to my website at stefancodes.com and just go to this YouTube section, and that will contain this environment object tutorial source code, as well as the source code for all of the other YouTube projects we've done here on the site. That includes Threads, SwiftUI with Instagram, this authentication suite, this messenger app, all of that is available on the YouTube channel. The links for those are in the description, guys. And if you want the source code for those projects, go ahead and just become a member on the site for less than a coffee a day. If you guys really want to invest in your iOS development career and go pro, highly recommend becoming a member on the site. It gives you access to a ton of material, including all of these pro courses, beginner courses like SwiftUI Bootcamp, networking, programming fundamentals, and these pro courses as well like Instagram, Threads, Airbnb, a bunch of amazing app templates. Recently just released a SwiftUI TikTok clone, guys. That is absolutely epic. It's completely built with SwiftUI. And if you guys become a member, you can get access to all of that stuff for free for just less than a coffee a day. But anyway, guys, now that we've gone over where to get the source code and how to sign up on my site, let's hop back into Xcode. So let's talk about what we have here. So we have our UI set up or our flow set up, right? But we don't have an actual data model right now. So ultimately what we want to do is have some sort of user object that we can pass along to this screen, and then we can further pass information along to the edit screen so that we can ultimately edit that user's info. So what we're going to need to do is create that object here. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste that bad boy. This is a very simple data object or struct. It just has a full name, an email, an address, and this computed property to help get our user's initials. So Now that we have that, guys, let's go ahead and sort of create this data model in our application and have the information that we display reflect the data model that we create. So I'm going to create a state property for our user. So we can just say user. Let's say our full name is Steve Smith, steve@gmail.com. Address is 456 Main Street. And let's go ahead and inject all of this user info into our code now. So instead of having this hard-coded data of like JD, John Doe, Doe.John, we're going to be able to create any sort of user data object we want and inject that into our UI. So here I am going to say user.initials. And if it's not there, if nothing's there, we'll just make it a blank string. And then here, I'm going to say user.fullname, user.email, and user.address. So this looks great, right, guys? But if you're using the MVVM architecture in SwiftUI, let's imagine you have to fetch this user data from an API of some sort. You're probably going to want to have a view model in here somewhere and then get this user data from that view model. So I'm just going to go ahead and create that really quickly and paste it in here. And I know I'm moving through this a little quickly, guys, but it's so that we can get to the point of what an environment object is and what it does. So I'm going to create this content view model. It's going to have a published variable, which is a user. And then when we initialize it, we're going to give that user a value. And then we are going to read that value or receive this value in our content view from this content view model. So we are going to go and create a state object for our view model here and say it equals content view model. So this is going to throw some errors. So now we need to get our user from our content view model. So you guys can either go ahead here and just say view model dot user dot initials blah blah blah, or a trick I like to use so you don't have to type out view model dot blah 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 each time is you can just go here and say private var user, which is a user, and return view model dot user. And that will make all those errors go away. So next up, guys, what we want to do is be able to pass this information along to the next screen, and then one layer deeper, pass it to the next screen so that we can ultimately edit that information and have that take effect in both our second screen and our main screen. So we basically just want to modify this original user object here and have that take place or take effect in each one of the screens that is responsible for displaying that user information. So typically what you guys might have seen before is the use of observed objects. So let's go over how to implement that first, and then we will go over how we can use environment objects to clean that up a little bit and make our architecture a lot cleaner. So if we go to edit profile view, we still have all this nasty hard-coded data here. But what we can do is add an observed object for our view model, which is our content view model. And now we have access to the user through use of this view model. We can now just do the same thing, right? I can say private var user, which is a user, return view model.user. And I can replace all of my information here with my view model.user.fullname, or sorry, just user.fullname. And here I can say user.email, and here I can say user.address. And so, that's not terrible, right? We just need to pass this view model along to get access to all of our user data. But then we would have to pass it along to our edit email view and our edit address view, which we'll do in just a second, to ultimately be able to edit our user's info. So let's just continue down this path really quickly. So now when I create my edit profile view, I need to pass this view model along as an observed object. So if you guys are confused about the difference between state and observed objects, I have another video on this channel that breaks that down in detail. Make sure you check that out on the channel. The link is in the description for that. So here I can just pass along my view model, guys. And let's maybe change up our user info one more time just to see if this is working properly. Let's say Steve Johnson, and let's do steve@gmail.com. And let's let our preview load, and let's go over to the next screen and see if that gives us what we want. Ooh, I think we need to go to our edit profile view and fix the preview. Yeah, so here we can just say view model, content view model. So let's go back to our content view. We click on this, and now we see all of this information displayed correctly. Steve Johnson, steve@gmail.com, 123 Main Street. So now what I would need to do to actually pass the user along here and ultimately edit that would be adding the view model as an observed object in those other child views as well. So let's just go ahead and do that really quickly. So I can just do the exact same thing here. Edit email view. We'll just do it for the email view for now. And when we hit done, we're going to say viewModel.user.email equals this email that is unique to this view. That's what the user types in. And let's actually do this. Perfect. Okay. So let's see if this works, guys. So let's go and pass that along here. So now in our edit email view, we need to pass along this view model. So we say view model, and we are going to say just pass along that view model. And let's go back to our content view and see if we can go through this flow and actually edit the user's email. So I can say test email at gmail.com and hit done. And you guys will notice that it updates in the previous screen and it updates in my original screen as well. So that's really good. That gives us the effect that we want, right? However, this isn't exactly scalable, right, guys? Or it's annoying to scale, rather. I shouldn't say it's not scalable because we have obviously accomplished what we want. But let's imagine we had to go 5 or 6 or maybe 10 screens deep and go through this really complex edit profile flow, right? We have to continue passing along this observed object in each one of those screens. So if edit email had more screens it could go to, every time I need to get access to the user, I have to pass along this observed object as my view model in each one of those screens. And that gets annoying because, you know, I got to pass it along like this and I had to pass it along in this view. So this is where environment objects come into play. An environment object gives us access to the view model from each one of those screens without having to pass it along. So what I'm going to do is just change this to environment object. And let's see what happens. So you guys will notice that back inside of my content view, I no longer need to pass along or inject this view model into that view, right? It's going to read it from the environment that it's in. And really quickly, guys, you'll notice that we're getting an error if we try to build. And that's because we also see in our preview that we were injecting it or passing along our view model as an input parameter. We no longer need to do that. So we can already see how this is starting to clean up our code, right? Every time I want to use this view model, which will be to either pass along this user information or update the user object itself, I no longer have to pass it along. It's simply going to read it as an environment object. It just has to originate in one place, and then I can use it as an environment object in all other places that are part of that environment. And what I mean by environment, guys, is this is all considered an environment. Like everything in this flow is considered one environment. So I can use the view model in all of those separate screens, no matter how deep I go into that flow, as an environment object instead of having to pass it along as an observed object. But if we run our application here, guys, we're going to notice something interesting. So if I go and I try to go to the next screen, I get a crash. So it's saying, hey, no environment object has been set up. So what you have to do in order to make this work is actually add this as a modifier. So you have to say .environment object view model. So basically this is setting the environment object as this view model here so that every subsequent view that is part of that environment can read from that or can recognize that view model. Before, we had never set an environment object of this view model and then was trying to access it, which was causing a crash. So let's go ahead and go back into our edit profile view. So guys, we're using this as an environment object now. Now let's take it one step further and set this up as an environment object in our edit email view as well. And let's do that in our edit address view as well. And here in our done button, we are going to say viewModel.user.address equals address. Now you guys will notice that because we set this up as an environment object, we no longer need to inject it here. So like I said before, we can already see how this is starting to clean up our code, but let's go ahead and run this uno más tiempo one more time to see if that works. So we go here, and everything looks fine, right? but we're not trying to use the view model until we hit the done button. Viewmodel.user.email equals email. So if I type in an email right here, guys, I say like test@gmail.com and I hit done, we'll notice that we're going to get a crash as well. So you might be going like, hey dude, what the heck? I thought the view model was supposed to be read from the environment. Well, the way this is currently set up, we would actually have to go ahead and say .environment object view model again. So you guys might be thinking, well, yo, dude, that's like the same thing as before. It's just different, right? It's potato here. Instead of having to inject it every time I want to use it, I have to set it up as a modifier. Well, you're right in thinking that, but there is a way we can overcome that problem. So what I can do is, instead of creating the original state object as my view model here in my content view, I can create the original state object in the very root of my application. And I can go here and say @state_object var view model equals content view model. And now I can set that up as an environment object on my content view. And let's see how we can now modify our code to actually have the desired effect of our application without having to set the environment object as a modifier on each one of the views we need to use the view model in. So inside of our content view now, guys, because I've set an environment object on this guy from the root of my application, I can actually just go ahead and make this an environment object now. So I'm actually going to comment this out and I'll explain why in a second. Let's go ahead and just make an environment object var view model. And you guys will notice that if you try to initialize this, it's going to throw an error. So you cannot initialize environment objects. They have to originate from somewhere else. So in this case, we have our original state object inside of our app file, and then we set it as an environment object on the view model. You cannot initialize environment objects, guys. That's very important to understand. They are read from somewhere. So we are just going to state that this will be of type content view model. And because it's an environment object, it's telling your code, hey, this has to come from somewhere else, right? And we're setting that environment object up on our app file. So now what we can do is delete this modifier, and we can go to our edit profile view and delete that modifier as well. And let's go ahead and run our app and see if that works as expected. So I'm going to go in here, no crashes. Here, no crashes. Let's go ahead and edit the email now. We'll say test@gmail.com. Hit done. And guess what, guys? Not only does it not crash, it updates our email there beautifully. And let's update our address as well, 456 Main Street. Hit done. It updates there as well. And you notice that updated email persists there as well. And if I go back, guess what? Just like that, my entire user object is updated. So how exactly and why exactly is that working, guys? So basically, from the very root of our application, we set up our view model instance. So we're basically just going to use one instance or one version of this view model. We only initialize it one time. And then we set it up on our content view as an environment object. So now every child view that gets initialized from the content view, right? So we have our content view here, and then from the content view, we go over to this view, and then we go over to this view or this view. But the root of this navigation stack is the content view, as we can see here. So because we've set that as an environment object on this view, every subsequent view that comes from that utilizes that environment object will have access to it. So we use it as an environment object here, and we no longer have to pass it along with the use of that modifier, because it's already being used as an environment object right here. So that's the beauty of environment objects, guys. And you notice that we can go to each one of those child views and we just get access to it. And you guys notice we're never initializing it like this anywhere, right? We're just reading it from that as an environment object. So long story short, guys, an environment object is a way to share data and state between different views in your app. And we saw one way of doing that with observed objects first, but that got annoying because we had to inject it in each view that we wanted to have access to that view model inside of. So ultimately, the environment object is just a cleaner implementation of this, and it gives you a better and cleaner, more efficient way of sharing a particular object across different views in your application. So the key point here, guys, is that you initialize the view model in sort of like the root view of your application, and then you can pass it along as an environment object, and then everything that comes from this content view will have access to that environment object automatically. So much cleaner implementation as opposed to using observed objects everywhere and having to pass them along and inject them into all of the views that you need. That's where an environment object can really come in handy. So thanks for watching this video, guys. If you want more info on SwiftUI, make sure you check out the links in the description to this video. Have a ton of other awesome breakdowns, and also have a full-blown SwiftUI bootcamp, which you guys can check out on my website at stephancodes.com. There is a free version of this on the YouTube channel, but this is the full version, which is one of the App Stuff Pro courses. And if you guys become a member, you can access that course absolutely free for just less than a coffee a day. And some other super exciting stuff that has been released lately on the website, guys, is this awesome TikTok clone that we see here. So this is a straight up TikTok clone, fully built using SwiftUI. It's absolutely incredible. And you guys can go ahead and check that out as well. If you want access to that source code, it's in the app template section. SwiftUI TikTok Pro right there. I will be releasing a video instructional course for this as well. Free version on YouTube, pro course on the website as always. So thanks for watching this one, guys. Make sure you check out the website and all the awesome content I have there if you are serious about becoming a professional iOS developer. Thanks for watching. Peace out, everybody.